Joe Biden released his crisis plan and received former President Obama's endorsement and even Bernie Sanders' backing. But America still doesn't believe he might have a handle when it comes to that pandemic. That's according to this new Business Insider poll. 26% say they strongly distrust Biden on coronavirus, with 43% overall indicating they have some degree of distrust. And only 28% said they do trust him.
So how does he overcome that trust deficit? And what is in his coronavirus crisis plan? Joining us now with his perspective is former advisor to Bill and Hillary Clinton and great friend of the show and Riser fan favorite, Richard Goodstein.
Right. Good to see you,
Richard.
Great
to see you, Richard. I hope you're doing well.
Back.
You're welcome
of course.
anytime.
Good to be here.
So what do you make of that trust deficit? I mean, obviously this election, it looks like it's going to come down to who voters think is better equipped to handle the coronavirus crisis. Why do you think that the former vice president isn't doing better on this metric right now?
So I actually don't think it's going to come down just to who could handle the coronavirus crisis better. But let's just talk about that for a second. The fact of the matter is, what I think where the president comes up short is why he's come up short generally with voters is that people just don't trust him generally, having nothing to do with coronavirus. Just look at all the polls about whether you believe Donald Trump is an honest person. And the answer largely, not just among Democrats and independents, is no. So I think where Joe Biden has an edge is that people see him as somebody who is decent, who has suffered loss, who can do things out of not out of self-interest, but out of public interest. So therefore, his plan, which was to do it step by step and not just do it on his hunches, what he believes might work, but frankly, on what science says will work. That, I think, is a big difference between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. And I think that poll that you showed kind of reflects the general partisan split that we're seeing on a lot of things. So I don't think we should put too much stock in that.
But Richard, you know, we've heard that about Donald Trump, unfavorability, all of that. That's all true. But he was very unfavorable in 2016, and then he was elected to the president of the United States. And one of the things that you have blamed as a result of that was Bernie Sanders' unwillingness to back Hillary Clinton, in your words, in 2016, sufficiently enough. This time around, if Joe Biden were to come up short, as it stands right now, do you think that Bernie has done enough, in your view, in order to make sure that Biden will ascend to the presidency?
Yes, I actually, my hat is off to Bernie Sanders. And frankly, had he endorsed Biden a month ago, just around the time that the coronavirus was really taking over the news, I don't think it would have made any difference compared to his doing it the other day. I actually think what Bernie is doing, incorporating his supporters in these work groups with Biden people on different issues, frankly, the Barack Obama endorsement, which tipped his hat to Bernie Sanders, I think, look, remember 6 weeks ago, Republicans were licking their chops at the prospect of a convention that was never going to end, that was going to be multiple ballots. The Democratic Party was going to be divided unlike ever. And now it's unified unlike ever. This is Donald Trump's worst nightmare. So I will not blame Bernie Sanders for doing anything to cost Joe Biden if Biden loses.
All right, we're going to hold you to that, Richard.
Yeah,
we're going to play this tape back to you come November, depending on how things go. Let me ask you, do you think that whether Joe Biden has done enough to win over Bernie Sanders supporters? Congresswoman AOC, first of all, she said she's literally never had a conversation with Joe. He hasn't reached out to her whatsoever. And she also called his offering of lowering the Medicare age from 65 to 60, which, as you know, is not as far as Hillary Clinton went. She said, let's lower it down to 50 or 55, that was almost an insult to progressives. What's your response to that?
It's what I said the last time I was on the air with you. If progressives cannot see a distinction and understand what the future will look like if Donald Trump is going to be reelected on health care alone, Donald Trump is going to court to do away with pre-existing conditions. Forget lowering the Medicare age. He is going to court to deny tens of millions of people protection for pre-existing conditions. So if progressives on that factor alone cannot distinguish between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, shame on them.
So, yes, Richard, let me ask you, though, let's dig in on that. Does that mean that Joe shouldn't offer progressives anything because they have to suck it up because he's better than Trump?
No. The fact of the matter is, I think all indications are, from what Joe Biden has said on that call with Bernie the other day and what Barack Obama has said, is that, in fact, I think Obama said Biden has the single most progressive platform of any Democratic presidential nominee ever. Now, should he do more to reach out to Bernie's people? Absolutely. In a way that Hillary didn't? Yeah, I think actually that would probably be advisable. And to Bernie's credit, he's basically saying, look, Joe and I don't agree on everything, but I am throwing my full support behind Joe. I think all the signs are there for something that we would never have forecast 6 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm. So let's dig in on that. You said Hillary didn't do that. I mean, in the past, you've said that it was Bernie's fault for not throwing support. So which is it there, Richard?
I think, as I said before, what Bernie's people did at the convention alone in 2016 was shameful. Again, Hillary Clinton was the nominee. She won by 4 million votes, had hundreds more pledged delegates, forget the super delegates. She won, and it wasn't close. And the fact that Bernie and his people went to the convention still fighting that fight, booing her and her supporters when they were on that platform was shameful. Did Bernie step up and go around the country? Yes, he did. Good for him. But I just think the signal that he sent was, you know what, do what you want to do. I'm supporting her, but I don't think it was as full-throated as I think what we've now seen just within the past couple days.
So, Richard, what do you make of the polling position of Joe Biden right now? Because the national polls consistently give him a bit of an edge. The battleground polls are quite a bit closer. Nate Cohn at the New York Times did a big analysis and pointed out also that once you add in that likely voter screen, this is basically a tie ball game. That's actually worse positioning than where Hillary Clinton was at this point in the race last time around, where she held somewhere around an 11-point national lead on Donald Trump. We've also seen polling that shows Joe Biden and Donald Trump tied with voters under the age of 35, which is kind of astonishing for a party that really prides itself of being the party of the future. How comfortable do you feel with that polling right now, given, again, that Joe is in a worse position than Hillary was last time around?
Two things. First, presidents typically see this rally round the flag, kind of phenomenon in the polls when there is a national crisis. Donald Trump is seeing less of that. In fact, he's now ticking down from where he was at his height in a way that every foreign leader, every governor of every substantial state in the United States is seeing their polls tick way up, frankly, no matter what's happening regarding the spread of the disease, when there's a sense that these governors and these foreign leaders are stepping up. And Donald Trump is not seeing that. That's point one. Two, Nate Cohn's article looked at polls as of March 15th. Think where we were relative to the coronavirus and the absolute decline of this economy on March 15th relative to today. And think where we're going to be when the second quarter economic numbers are released in July for GDP retraction, for job, for the loss of millions of jobs. And you tell me you don't think voters are going to take that into effect? The economy with Donald Trump's one calling card, you think that's going to be his calling card this fall? I don't.
Well, certainly going to be watching it. All right, Richard, thank you. Thanks for joining the show. We always love talking to you.
Good to see you, Richard. Have a good one.
Thanks. You too. Be well.
Next on Rising, the Biden campaign calls for, quote, a return to normalcy. But young voters demand a push for fundamental change. We're going to hear what it's like to take to mobilize millennial and Gen Z voters from the executive director of Justice Democrats, Alexandra Rojas. That's when Rising continues.